they either have to take off or just pay somebody, and either way, it's a lose-lose situation.
God love them.
We just went live just to let you all know.
All right.
Ooh, stop what I'm saying. Okay.
All right. Hey, just
up now.
Just to make sure everybody's on the up.
Or no, we can do the live comments here. Okay. There we
go. Kenny, are those live comments the ones on YouTube as well?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Can you all see them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can see them.
Oh, and we just
lost Fred.
He's out.
We had all kinds of fun issues over here. So, Aaron, I'm assuming you didn't figure it out.
I didn't. Do you want me to jump off or just have me?
I think it's okay. I'll tell you what you can try to do one more time. Hit shift and then refresh, and then see if that pop-up comes up again. And then we'll see if that gets you added and see if you have that pop-up that says to allow your camera to access the site.
Gotcha.
And if not, it's just witness protection. It looks good.
Yep. Blake, that Florida Wi-Fi doing all right over there?
in the live comment section, so I thought it was because I wasn't logged in, so I just clicked login. And
okay.
But
also put
I feel like it let me last time.
Same here. The pop out thing for YouTube is probably better for us.
Yeah.
We hijack people.
Yeah, I just put it in the chat so you all can access that now. So Aaron, I guess the refresh didn't work for you.
No, that didn't work.
Well, we're gonna move on without your beautiful face on here.
Our female viewership
makes us
just
look
dropped.
better. Yeah, exactly. We all look better now.
Yeah, that's true. Apologize to our female viewers up front.
We don't have a video. Now I'm out.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. All right. Yeah. Sorry, what'd you say?
Said you can Google image what I look like if anyone knows.
Yeah.
Just have it in one screen sitting there.
Yeah.
That sounds all right. People are asking, where's Ryan, the people's champ? So Ryan is also dealing with some coronavirus stuff. He's got to make sure he's got. If anybody's not aware, basically starting on Monday, schools are going to be closed for the next 3 weeks in Kentucky. And so he's trying to get childcare set up for all of his employees so they can work during that time. So
good for Ryan.
Yep.
It's basically, I mean, like setting up his own daycare essentially, or what?
Daddy daycare.
Yeah. Jeez. The joys of being a business.
Take him on sites with him. I mean, that'd be fun. It's an adventure.
You kids ever ridden a tractor?
Yeah.
He said he's going to probably join in the chat though, so we might see him here in a little bit. So, all right, we ready to get this kicked off?
Let's roll.
Yeah. All right. So we, like I said, we're going to talk about Corona just a little bit because COVID-19 is definitely on top of everybody's mind. But I don't want that to be the star of the show. And we'll get into basically all Blanton's talk, I think, here in a little bit. And that's going to take up it's all going to take up a big chunk of time. So I don't want this to be the longest roundtable ever, but no promises. All right, here we go. Welcome back to another episode of Bourbon Pursuit, the official podcast of Bourbon. Kenny and Fred here tonight. People's Champ isn't able to make it because of coronavirus things that are happening. So we'll go ahead and, we'll send our best wishes to Ryan. He doesn't have the coronavirus. I don't want to make that clear. The way I said that probably sounded like really dire. No, he's actually trying to do some things for his job and set up daycare because we've got a lot of things happening where schools are going to be shut down for the next few weeks here in Kentucky. So he's got to make sure that he's taking care of his employees tonight. So we're going to miss Ryan tonight, but we will go on without him. So before we kind of introduce everybody here, I kind of want to talk to Fred. Are you doomsday prepared? You got enough bourbon and toilet paper to get you through for the next month?
Well, like today was, I wasn't supposed to be on today because I was supposed to be in San Francisco for the competition, but last minute, we had to scare ourselves. And my wife, she's on the committee for getting the Louisville VA hospital prepared for the coronavirus. So we've been getting prepared, I think, for the last 3 months. In fact, we thought there was a tornado coming. There might be a tornado coming, so we had a little tornado drill with the family. We all went down to the basement, and I was really proud. We brought chips and toilet paper, and the baby had something to play with. So we got this.
Your baby can play with toilet paper too.
Well, he went down there and he went straight for the bourbon. I'm like, this is my kid.
It's in the DNA.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go ahead. Let's go around the horn real quick. But first, before we hit some of our regulars, I want to introduce somebody that's new to the podcast. We have a stand-in tonight. So Aaron Goldfarb, who you all have probably seen from a lot of articles out there online. So Aaron, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, even though I don't know how to use a computer apparently. So
it's okay. We'll let it slide this time. We'll do some tech support next time we need to call in a pinch hitter here.
Absolutely.
So just kind of give everybody a quick recap or kind of summary of like who you are, where you write, and everything like that.
Yeah, I'm accidentally fell into becoming a booze writer. I write a lot of whiskey articles, but I write cocktail articles, beer articles, and food articles for places like Esquire, Punch, Fine Pear, Whiskey Advocate, Bourbon Plus, my favorite place to write.
Good boy.
I've written a few books too, Hacking Whiskey, most notably for your audience. Gather Around Cocktails was my most recent book, and just learned that my kid has the next 2 weeks off school, so I think this is the end of my writing career for a while at least.
We're all trying to set up some sort of daycares at home, or I don't know. Maybe we should just like go out and like buy the like 5,000 piece puzzles off of Amazon and be like, here you go. This is your next 2 weeks.
Exactly.
All right. So Blake, how you doing tonight?
Doing well, yeah. Always good to be back. Just straight into my intro. I feel like we're kind of changing things up. So, do I give the regular, hey, I'm Blake from Bourboner? Do I just talk about coronavirus? Or
I mean, you can talk about what's happening in your area. I mean, it's
ours
craziness
is,
happening.
No, I had the flu last week, so I feel like I was out, and it wasn't the coronavirus. It was just the flu. So that was not fun.
Did you get tested?
Yeah, I got tested. Well, I tested positive for the flu, so I guess I didn't test negative for corona, but yeah, there's been no cases in Florida that I'm aware of. But no, it's crazy. I mean, the TPC, that's a huge thing in this area, and so they actually announced today that they're suspending all fans from the tournament, and this golf tournament will bring in over 100,000 people to come and watch it. So it was pretty disappointing. I was supposed to be going out to the tournament with my son tomorrow, so that's a little disappointing. And it's spring break for us, and as you can see, my daughter's like in the background. So they're talking about extending spring break here as well. But yeah, this should be interesting. I don't know. I'm one who I just think you've got like a 1% chance of it actually hitting and being devastated. So I'm like, I'll just be unprepared, and 99% of the time I'll be correct. So it's just if that 1% gets me, but no. So longest intros for the longest episode we're about to get into.
I think you're right on point there. So Jordan, what's happening in your part of the world?
Well, the corona hasn't been declared. So eastern PA, right? There's a bunch of cases. Nothing in Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh's, I don't want to say naive, but like right around today was the first time a little bit of unease and unsettledness kind of kicked in. Right. And now that the NHL canceled the Penguins, right, people are super upset. But I'm sure we'll be seeing cases pop up super soon. I don't really even know if they're testing or if they have test kits here in Pittsburgh yet. So I'm sure there's cases that we don't know about. So I don't know. Thankfully, it's a state-run liquor system, so there's tons of bottles still on the shelves. Not saying people want to buy that one, but it's there.
Absolutely. And Brian, in our part of the world.
Yeah, your part of the world. Thanks for having me again. Brian with Sippin' Corn. Find me at bourbonjustice.com. My only effect so far is tonight, instead of doing this, I was going to be drinking an Evan Williams 23-year-old, Old Fitzgerald 15, and the 101 12-year Evan Williams with the client. And the client had travel restrictions and wasn't supposed to go anywhere. And so I got my thing canceled. So now it's personal because it kept me from my bourbon. But other than that, it's hasn't really affected me. I've got my daughter home from Dayton. They kick them out early. They won't be going back. So just I've got my bourbon supply. I'll be all right. And 1 point for Aaron. Aaron, I have to tell you this before I forget. I tried to do from Hacking Whiskey the bacon infused bourbon, and it was probably the biggest flop that I have ever created in my life. We'll need to talk offline. I need to know the secret, because theoretically, everything about that I should just love, and I ruined both bourbon and bacon doing mine.
It's funny. I always tell people it sounds harder to do fat washing than it is, and it's almost impossible to screw up. But I guess
leave it to me. Yeah.
I've actually had a very similar experience, Brian. So I have a few tips.
Good.
It's you want to slowly render the bacon. Made the mistake of like crispy, and I think just the burntness came through. So
that's what I had.
It can't get black.
Yeah,
absolutely.
No.
Okay, good.
Bacon Pursuit coming soon.
Bacon Pursuit.
Hey, I'd listen to that.
It sounds delicious. Peppercorn all over it. So, Fred, you've been kind of close to this, because I know, at least with the Corona stuff, you've been actually reaching out to distilleries. Kind of give us the latest on what's been happening with what distilleries are doing for preparing for this.
Well, I mean, you ask them personally, a lot of them will say it's all bullshit. And then when it comes to like a corporate message, they'll come out and say, well, we're closing visitations starting Monday. So Beam has closed visitations for Maker's Mark and the other properties starting on Monday. Brown-Forman announced the closures of their Kentucky facilities for visitations on Sunday, and Jack Daniel's on Monday. New Riff has made similar announcements. I have not heard yet back from Heaven Hill. I've reached out to them a couple times. I've not heard back from them yet. Interestingly, places like the smaller distillers seem to be the ones that are kind of like, we're still doing tours. Like MB Roland in Western Kentucky was very proud to say that, we're still doing this. And, so a lot of them have these kinds of plans in place for the visitor side, and they're all continuing production. And I think production is like, I think that's one of the hardest questions to answer. Is like, what if one of the workers gets test positive? What's the protocol there? Like, I mean, I really don't know what the manufacturing protocol is for when you have a pandemic and someone tests positive for something that gets out into the market. Do you have a recall? I mean, those are the kinds of questions that they have to be taking. But at the same time, the Kentucky Distillers Association is meeting with the governor's office, who has been meeting with the vice president. So, I mean, we're like 3 degrees away from, the highest office in the land here when it comes to what can affect the Kentucky distilleries.
So I'm not an expert, and I'm not going to claim to be, but from what I understand is that this is all basically through respiratory and oral is kind of how it gets transferred really easily. So unless people are like spitting in the mash tubs, I'm not too sure exactly. Even that, it's probably gets
even
that
out. Alcohol would. Right?
Yeah, and so I'm not too sure, honestly, if even if a worker does, come in and actually is affected. I think the only thing that it might actually affect is just the production. Probably just send everybody home, do shut down production for X amount of days, come back, do a deep clean, go back to work.
Yeah, but there is this whole thing where you have to the government's issue like where people had it, what they touched, where they went. I was somewhere and got it, and someone was there the day after me, and I got an email about it. And, that was kind of one of a personal scare for me. But, I don't know, like if somebody works in a factory, does the government then require that factory to issue a statement to its consumers? I just don't know. There's not really a precedent for any of this. It's very, very scary.
And I think it's more so, right, as much as they might want to keep manufacturing, right? They're just one part of the manufacturing puzzle. So if a farmer who distills the grains and drops them off, right, not distills, I'm sorry, if the farmer who harvests the grains and drops them off, or the trucking company drops them off, or they can't drop them off because they have the coronavirus, you don't got any grain to mash, you're not doing much, right? Same with barrels, stuff like that. So I think it goes the whole Or to Fred's point, maybe you don't have to notify consumers, but then you got to notify your whole manufacturing chain, right? And maybe folks then don't want to drop off supplies because they're afraid that they're going to catch up for their employees. So I think it's just not as simple as, the virus doesn't survive much longer, once it's out of somebody's system in the air or when it touches something for more than a few hours. So consumers should be safe, but it's more, how does that impact everyone they interact with up and down the whole supply chain?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest issue this really is facing right now is the tourism aspect, which has been it's been what the industry's been hanging its hat on, with the rise of these like the trade wars. This was the one thing that everyone said, well, we still got like domestic growth and we got tourism. And so, this is, you take out the more than 2 million people coming here to visit Kentucky distilleries. I mean, my God, there are talks in town about impacting the Derby. I mean, I can't even imagine not having the Derby. Brian, can you? I mean, I can't envision it.
No, I heard that today too. They're talking about maybe postponing, and it's they're still looking at it. No decisions made yet, but it's just crazy talk.
Hey, let's face it, Churchill. I mean, they'll be like, just bet from home. Who cares? Just bet from home.
Right. They'll sign up for Twin Spires Club, and they'll give you $50 free or whatever, and they'll be laughing all the way to the bank.
The other component of this that should be getting Blake excited, actually, because of Sealbox, is that this is going to be one of the moments where we see an enormous increase of shipments, and people don't want to get out of their house, so they're not going to go to a liquor store. What are they going to do? They're going to buy they're going to visit sealbox.com or wherever and
get their 20 alcohol. After the show, Fred. Yeah.
It's 40, Blake.
Yeah, 40 now. Okay.
But that's what's going to happen is they're going to get deliveries. I mean, we're getting deliveries from Whole Foods and Kroger right now. So it's crazy.
Yeah, I think there was somebody that actually talked about on our Discord chat a little bit earlier through Patreon, and they were saying, well, what happens if Corona gets spread into Amazon and into these delivery services? And it was like, it's a true concern. The other part of this is, thank God they're heavily automated, right? There's robots that basically pack those boxes for everybody. So you got that going on.
But what if someone sneezes on a robot?
What if
somebody sneezes on your package right before they hand it to you?
What if this was all just a way for the robots to take control and they actually created coronavirus?
I'm with you on that. They created it.
I mean, everyone's talking about Walking Dead, but what if this is really Terminator about to happen?
They planted the seed. That's how it
works. You're not pushing vodka conspiracies, Fred.
Yep.
What'd you say?
I'm surprised you're not pushing vodka conspiracies.
Speaking of vodka conspiracies, Jordan, was today's email like a backhanded compliment to Tito's?
Oh, yesterday?
What email are we talking? Hey, hold on. Let's set the stage here because I have no idea what email you're talking about.
Breaking Bourbon newsletter, right, for Whiskey Wednesday. I went out and it was a PSA on how to make your own hand sanitizer. So we did give Tito's the nod, and the fact that they are aggressively letting consumers know whenever they tweet or interact with them on social media that no, you cannot use Tito's for hand sanitizer because it is not 60% alcohol. Right. So we did we do give them credit on that one, right? But I mean, let's be real. If you're going to use hand sanitizer and you must use bourbon, we prefer you drink it, but at least use 120 proof bourbon to do something right.
But there was a comment in there to Tito's about at least they're clearing some of the facts up. And I thought that was a handcrafted, made in Texas kind of. Just make sure I wasn't reading into it too much.
But once again, vodka fails. I mean, you look at it, it's like everyone's like starting to champion it for something that it can may be valuable for, and it can't even do hand sanitizer.
Oh, that's a perfect way to end this. I don't really want to talk about coronavirus anymore. Do you all?
Yeah, no, I'm done.
No, that was
too much hysteria. Yeah,
that was enough.
Funny.
All right, good. So let's move on to kind of the meat of the show here. Should we wait for Blake to open his bottle here because we can all hear him?
Is this all that loud?
Don't you have the mute control too?
Well, he already muted him. It's my game.
There we go. I'll mute him.
All right,
There you go.
perfect.
Why didn't
take
he
control.
remove the
We'll let him-
plastic
we'll-
before the show started?
You know, Aaron, you would think 42 times into this, he would have figured it out by now. But this is just like it's every 3
Blake's
weeks.
about to get sanctioned.
Yeah, it's either that his Wi-Fi dies. I mean, it keeps going. So, all right, so let's kind of get into the meat of the show, because the one thing that we've all kind of seen is just the hysteria that has surrounded Blanton's. And to kind of just give a little bit of background and context, there is a great article that was posted by Chuck Cowdery back in 2013, and he gave a history of Blanton. So I'm just going to go ahead and just take a minute or two just to read this, just so everybody kind of gets up to speed on it, because I know we've had people request like, hey, why don't you do an episode on the history of Blanton's? Come to find out, there's probably not a whole lot that we could do a whole episode about. So this is going to be it right here. So if you think back in the 1980s, it was a bleak period for bourbon. Oh, thanks, Brian. Golly.
Sorry.
Everybody's just popping bottles. They don't even give a shit what's going on around here.
I'm listening, really. I thought it was a good timing.
See, Aaron, this is what I'm talking about. Nobody's learned the proper etiquette for how to pour their bourbon before
I've
they
got my
start.
mute button. I'll use the mute button.
I don't have a camera, but I pre-poured everything, and
Jordan, you're next. Go.
Oh, I've already popped a bottle or two on this show, so I think we're good.
All right. I think everybody's got their bottle pops out of the way. All right. So in the 80s, sales were down, inventories were high, profits were under intense pressure, and whiskey assets were changing hands. Most of the large producers were no longer independent. Instead, they were part of conglomerates and with a portfolio of household names back then. Back then, F. Ross Johnson was the powerful CEO of Nabisco. Nabisco had a subsidiary called Standard Brands that included Fleischmann's Distilling. Ferdy Falk was the CEO of Fleischmann's, and Bob Baranskis, I think I'm going to screw that up, was the president. In 1983, Johnson decided to sell Standard Brands to Grand Metropolitan. A few years later, Grand Metropolitan merged with Guinness to form Diageo. Grand Metropolitan already had a thriving drinks business that included J&B Scotch and Smirnoff Vodka. Assuming they would be replaced after the sale, Falk and Baranskis, I know that's bad, resigned and started their own company. Falk was previously an executive with Schenley, so he approached Mechlem Rickless, whose conglomerate owned Schenley, about selling some assets. Falk and Baranskis originally tried to acquire Old Charter, but Rickless always needed money, so he agreed to sell H&H Bourbon brand and the distillery that produced it. Then it was called the Albert B. Blanton Distillery, today's Buffalo Trace. Falk and Baranskis called their new company Age International. As the name suggests, they believed bourbon's future was outside of the U.S. One of their first moves was to enlist the master distiller at the time, Elmer T. Lee, with the creation of Blanton's single barrel bourbon to appeal to the Japanese market, but with multiple extensions in Japan and the U.S. In 1991, Falk and Baranskis sold 22.5% interest in Age International to Japan's Takura Shuza with the right of first refusal to purchase the remaining shares. In 1992, Falk and Baranskis sold their shares to Takura for $20 million. Takara immediately sold the distillery to Sazerac, but retained the corporate entity and brand trademark. Today, Sazerac still owns Buffalo Trace, and Buffalo Trace still produces all the whiskey for H&H, Blanton's, and other Age International products and brands, using mash bill number 2, which is also being used for bourbons like Rock Hill Farms as well. Chris Falk commented on the article, and he said that was his father, Ferdy, had passed away from cancer in 2000, but Blanton's was the original super premium brand, and he said he can remember watching him draw the packaging idea on a napkin back in 1983. So
I followed all of that very closely.
So
yep, kept track of
I'd
all
like to add. I'd like to add to that, because this is something that gets really lost in the history of that brand, and I would argue we could have a whole show on the history of it. But in the basically when the Albert Blanton was head of the distillery, he used to take people out and he used to pick barrels for them. And that he would actually put that into the Kentucky retail market, effectively making it a single barrel asset, but they weren't really calling them single barrels back then. And so people, Sazerac would always use it in their marketing, that it was the first commercially available single barrel. That often got pushed back by people. but indeed it was. But that brand had a huge impact on the world. In my book Bourbon, I wrote about like how important it was for Japan and how it kind of opened that market up. Another thing that Blanton's did that was really important is it pissed off Maker's Mark, and it started making fun of Maker's Mark and advertisements for the saying like, oh, you have to talk about your wax because your whiskey isn't any good. So they kind of like, played with Maker's Mark in their own game, and they went back and forth. And so they had like this Blanton's created this statewide tasting competition in which they selected tasters in Lexington and Louisville to have a taste off between Makers and Blanton's. Blanton's won Lexington, and Makers won Louisville. So Blanton's is a really, really important brand in the return of bourbon. And this return of the introduction of gold Blanton's, it's like, for God's sake, it's about time. It's about time.
I want to get to that because that's a big part of today's show. But what I want to do is I kind of want to just trace this back about 2 years. And I want anybody that has a theory on why the hell did Blanton's just skyrocket in popularity. I know that we've seen it on some TV shows and everything like that, but was there something that happened that I missed that all of a sudden this round bottle with a horse on top just went crazy?
I have a theory, so I don't want to jump in, but I guess I will. So I think it's, and I wish I had notes because I talked to Chris Comstock about this the other day about their supply. The supply is basically, I think it's like 5x of what it was a few years ago, is what they're producing now. So it's not nearly as bad as people think. But in my opinion, what started to happen was a lot of these distributors and stores started seeing what was happening with Pappy and, the antique collection. And so they started allocating on the distribution side. So then instead of stores just like, yeah, order it whenever you want, they'd say, oh, we can only give you 2 bottles. Well, then the stores start telling the customers, hey, look, I'm only getting 2 bottles of this. It's at that price point that makes it, the high end. The bottle's cool. It tastes good. And so then as, that started building, you go into a store and see 2 bottles, you grab them, and then there's an empty shelf. So then I think the hype just started building and scarcity sells. So now every time people see it on the shelf, it's like, oh, I've got to grab as many bottles as I can find or as I can get, because who knows when I'll see it again. And that all seems to be happening over the last 2 to 3 years. I tell the story of that. Blanton's was actually the first barrel pick I ever did for Bourboner, and that was back in 2015. And I remember the retailer marked it up to, I think it was $64, and I lost, so many people saying that they're not going to work with the retailer that was trying to gouge. Like, I bought 5 cases, I had a few friends buy a bunch of cases, and now if I got a Blanton's barrel, it'd be gone in a day, and you could probably sell it for $100 a bottle or something crazy like that. But I still think it's all kind of like an artificial demand or an artificial shortage created by that middle tier. But that's just my opinion.
I think it also has to do with the fact that, right, so around that time, and don't get me wrong, we've been fans of Blanton's. I think back in 2014, we called it out on the site that we weren't sure why people were overlooking it. But then as Buffalo Trace in general, right, so all their bourbons started becoming more known to folks. People started realizing, oh, Pep Van Winkle comes from Buffalo Trace. Oh, BTAC, what's that? Okay. And then Elmer got really big, right? And then others started getting big. So especially if they wanted a single barrel, right, they'd go in, hey, can I get an Elmer? Oh, you can't get an Elmer, but look at this cool bottle. You get this little horse topper. It has a little wax on it, little bag. Sometimes you just find it in the box. Why don't you go for that instead, right? And it was just one of those things where people just want the next thing, right? So, all right, so I can't get any other Buffalo Trace product. What else you got? You got Blanton's, you can get that pretty easy. I'll take one of those, right? And then people start doing a little research, especially if people are really into bourbon. They realize that there's Blanton's Gold, there's Blanton's Straight from the Barrel, which used to be, again, easy to find, except 2 years ago, it was around 2 years ago, I think Master and Malt stopped shipping, right? And a lot of stores stopped shipping from over in Europe. And it was just that snowball effect, right? There's no rhyme or reason to a lot of stuff. It's just people like to hoard. People like to know it's cool. Blanton's caught on, right? Everyone, I'm sure, has friends who asks, what should I buy in the store? It used to be really simple to say, oh, just pick up a bottle of Blanton's. It's great bourbon, reasonably priced. Just go for it, right? I still say that, and then I catch myself going, except you're not going to be able to find it anymore, which stinks. But I think a lot of it is just that snowball effect that took place with consumers, especially around Buffalo Trace products.
You brought up something very important, Jordan, as you brought up Elmer T. Lee. And I've been thinking about this a lot since Kenny posed the question to us before the show about why did Blanton's take off? And I remember specifically after Elmer died, you could not find Elmer T. Lee. You could not find it. And the one bottle that everybody recommended after that, because it was accessible, was Blanton's. It wasn't Rock Hill Farms. It was always Blanton's was the bourbon that people recommended after Elmer T. Lee passed away. And there couldn't be a more fitting bourbon to recommend, since that was the one that he brought to life. And Elmer kind of gets forgotten. Elmer doesn't get talked about as much as some of the other deceased distillers like Booker Noe and Parker Beam, and it's a real shame because he was a titan of a distiller. And I think that he would be smiling quite happily to know that his stuff it was very difficult to get. He wouldn't be very happy with the price gouging, but I do believe that is when it all started, was in the quest to find Elmer. They got Blanton's and liked it.
And Fred, I kind of remember there was at least a couple year time period where to me it was the opposite of that. People wanted Blanton's, and Elmer was aged a couple of years more than Blanton's, and I couldn't figure out why people wanted Blanton's instead of Elmer. I mean, there was a time period where it overtook Elmer, and I don't know anything about the production. I don't know anything about what's being withheld, but it to Blake's point, it sure looks that way.
So there's the other thing that's sort of happening right now, and that is Buffalo Trace and Heaven Hill are implementing new systems where you can only purchase allocated items at Heaven Hill. Sometimes it's once a month. And in the case of Blanton's at Buffalo Trace, they're now doing this once every 3 months of actually scanning your driver's license and turning people away. And this is because, if anybody is unaware, the line that has been growing for Blanton's at the distillery has just gotten chaotic. I'm talking like 200 to 300 people that are waiting at 6 o'clock in the morning to get a bottle of regular Blanton's at the distillery. And so, Aaron, I'll kind of want to pose this question to you, get you involved here. Do you think this new system has a chance to actually succeed and work?
Well, I was going to.
Aaron, you're cutting out, buddy. I think we lost him.
Yeah, he and Blake are sharing Wi-Fi.
Aaron's, if I just want to bring him on camera, we're on the same Wi-Fi.
Yeah, Aaron, try to drop and come back on, and come back if you can, like maybe plug in or something. I'm not too sure. We'll get you in here. All right, so we'll take that in a different direction. So, Blake, do you think that has an actual chance to succeed with this particular kind of system?
So what's the actual system again? Sorry, I was typing whenever, and I was trying to type quietly.
All right, go straight to Jordan.
They're only allowed how many bottles? Like one a month or something?
This is what happens when like the teacher calls on you and you weren't paying attention. You're like,
the system Heaven Hill has in place. They've had it in place for like 2 years at Heaven Hill, where they scan your license when you buy.
Yeah.
Like Buffalo Trace implemented the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, you think about Willett did that for a while, and then they had their do not sell to list and everything. It'll definitely slow things down, but I don't know. I mean, I think that's good because ultimately you want some bottles at the distillery whenever people come and visit. I had this experience a few weeks ago when we were up there, and a friend of mine's like, man, none of these distilleries have any bottles. Like, I thought I'd be able to get something cool. Heaven Hill at least had, I don't even remember what we got, but I think they had a William Heaven Hill there. So at least there was something. But that's the hard part, is you don't want just the locals to come grab everything that is available, turn around and throw it up on Craigslist or wherever people are selling these days.
We don't do that in Kentucky, man.
Yeah,
Drink it.
it's never happened, right? Yeah, but so you kind of want to spread it out a little bit. So I think that'll help. But it's like anything else. People are going to do what they want to do. They're going to send their sister. They're going to send their cousin. They're going to send if they really want it that bad. But overall, hopefully, it kind of spreads the allocation a little bit further.
I mean, I'll say since I'm not located in Kentucky, right? At least from a Heaven Hill standpoint, I actually appreciate that they do that now because it seems more often than not, whenever I go down to Heaven Hill, and I always stop by when I'm in town, these tend to have a few bottles, right? That's, I think, based on the fact that they're helping to limit people from buying them. So from that standpoint, I think it's fantastic, right? Especially being somebody who's visiting Kentucky. And when I do go, I make sure to stop by the distilleries and buy stuff. But now they have stuff to buy, which I'm super appreciative of.
Yeah, and that's actually part of the reason this was actually implemented was Freddie Johnson was on the stage with Fred at a Legend Series recently, and he talked exactly about this, that this is all because of just trying to counteract the flipping game. And if you can limit what people can get, then you can do that. And plus, they want to reward people that are traveling from all around the country to go and visit the distillery, and they want to get something unique while they're there. And this is an opportunity to actually make that happen.
It's
they could also release a lot more bottles too.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
That's an option. Yeah, they could do that.
It's difficult. I look at it from the perspective of like every time, the distillers like wish for something and then they get it. And then like 5 years later, they're like, oh shit, So like now, like I remember when they were lobbying for this, they were like begging to have special bottles. They were begging to have this attention and this face time with the consumers. And now you hear them and they're like, crap, what are we going to do? Like now they're facing some of the same problems that their retailer partners have. So a lot more headaches for them for sure.
Personally, 3 months is, I think, a little bit generous. I would have rather seen a year because if there's 200 to 300 people lining up to do this and they're bringing their brothers, their sisters, their cousins, their aunts, and their uncles to get a bottle of Blanton's, like let's just nip this. Like it's Blanton's after all, right? Like it's good whiskey, but let's try to curb this because I don't see a reason why people should be going this nuts over it. And if they have a bottle of bourbon. And I think I remember seeing a lot of the comments when people announced that this system was getting put in place. They're like, "Oh, like why are you going to hurt your biggest consumers and your cheerleaders?" And I'm like, they make a lot of different whiskey. There's a lot of different bourbon out there on the market. Like, don't pin yourself into just like that one bottle. Like that mash bill makes a lot of different stuff, right? So like you don't need to be pigeonholing yourself into just one particular kind of whiskey for everything you drink.
Yeah, I was at a store one time and a guy was asking the clerk for he's like, "You guys got any Blanton's?" It was a Total Wine, and no, sorry, we don't have any Blanton's. And I was like, "Hey man, like actually they've got a Hancock single barrel pick that they've done, and it was like I think it was 7 years old or something. The exact same mash bill, maybe it wasn't in Warehouse H or whatever it is, but." Pretty much the exact same thing is like, I don't want that crap. I'm like, okay, never mind.
No horse. I mean, why bother?
Well, no, you bring up a really good point though, Brian, right? So the whole reason they had the horse in the first place, right? And way back when, one, it spelled Blanton's, which is cool, but two, it enticed people to keep buying it. So then you do find people who actually, for multitudes of reasons, right? And I'm not judging whatsoever, who once they find something and they do want to collect it just for that purpose, I realize you can buy the stopper from Buffalo Trace itself, right? But they actually then want to start collecting the bottles just to get the topper. So not only do they like it, but now they're like, well, crap, I need to get all the rest of them, right? So now their demand is, well, I just don't need one or two. Now I got to find all the letters.
I got 2 of the letters. I got to fill it out.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So it's they've kind of created a little bit of a headache in that sense for themselves. If there was no letters on the bottle, that would definitely eliminate a little bit of that from some folks.
Well, and a lot of people in the comments have said that the dump date being on every bottle, how many posts have you seen? Oh, my kid was born, or, oh, I'm looking for this dump date.
Yeah, they got married, I bought a house, whatever, they want that date.
Whatever it is, they want that date on there. I mean, it's marketing genius is what it is.
Yeah. It's a product of success, I think Fred alluded to this a little bit of they worked really hard to make these things popular and, get special releases out of the distillery. And then I don't want to say it backfired, but I think it caused them more headaches than they were thinking
Yeah.
it would. But it's a product of success. So at the end of the day, I don't think they mind it.
No,
the one thing that none of these companies are doing is they're not utilizing technology, and Kenny, I'd like to get your thoughts on this because you're the tech guy, but how hard would it be for them to like create like an order and hold or some kind of system for online to connect with the point of sale where someone could plan their trip and then come pick up a bottle? I just feel like there's so many opportunities to alleviate these problems that they never seem to explore. They're stuck in these inundated, antiquated, stand in line, look at an ID kind of crap.
I think it's just simple e-commerce is that a lot of, and I think we've touched on a lot of times, even just retailers and everybody else in general, like this type of market is behind the curve of what we see in every other type of industry. And so if they don't take the initiative to try to figure out like, how do we get our product into the hands of consumers faster and easier and less friction and make them a happy consumer? If you don't take that into account, then they're not going to do anything about it. The other thing is that if you look at what Sazerac is building with Blanton's and Buffalo Trace and everything, like they don't really, they're going to sell out no matter what. So do they need to go through all that extra effort to invest in an e-commerce platform, to invest in something where like, I don't know whether they have their own online, put your email in a database and come and pick your bottle up on this date kind of thing? I don't know if they really need to. So that kind of, like I said, it's a double-edged sword from there.
Yeah, and you do actually. So Fred, that's a great point that you make, both Kenny and Fred. But you do see some distilleries doing that, right? So look at New Riff, look at Angel's Envy with their main club, right? They both do that. So when they have special releases come out, you can pre-buy, and they give you 30 days to pick them up or X number of days to pick up. I think it's great, and it's also great for, again, if somebody's out in town to be like, all right, I got a month to go pick this up. I'll plan a quick trip around this or something like that, right? And it drives people there. And then I'm sure once they're there, they're like, well, shit, I'm here. Might as well buy some other stuff, whether it's from that distillery or a local store around there or whatever. But it's just great for the local economy in general. And I wish more distilleries did that.
Angel's Envy is absolutely crushing their special bottles. Yeah. People make events out of that. And I have never talked to one unhappy person out of there. I hear so many unhappy people coming out of Heaven Hill. There's so many unhappy people coming out of Sazerac. Really, no one from Beam, but I don't think anyone's necessarily going there for special releases. But the key distilleries that have special releases, of all of them, Angel's Envy is crushing it by far. That program that they have, people love it.
Yep.
And plus, it's an easy way for you to kind of like allocate these things online. And not only that, is you basically sell it before anybody actually picks it up. So it's instead of like putting it out there and hoping people come, like it's all online. If you make it easy and frictionless, then you're going to have a much better way to, have that kind of like cash flow and that pipeline coming in too.
Man, what if they did like bourbon futures where you could like, buy like a case of Blanton's 5 years from now or something?
So technically that's kind of what Bardstown Bourbon Company is doing. So their barrel pick now is you pay $1,000 deposit to get it, and then which I guess is not technically futures, but then you let it age as long as you want, and essentially you just pay the same price for whatever the standard bottling is, whether you let it go to 10 years or you let it go 6 months.
I'm familiar with that. It's just it's not proven, but like Blanton's
not nearly
proven.
As exciting to
it is a
Fair
concept
enough.
For sure, but like imagine like if you could buy a futures of Pappy 23 right now when your child is born or something like that, you do it in a heartbeat.
Yep.
But no one would want to track that accountant.
Somebody put Eric put in the chats about basically that's how Bordeaux works, and it's not like a Pappy 23 where you're waiting 23 years, but there is some time there, and it is interesting to see how that whole market works. And it's pretty crazy, but we may get there one day.
Negociants, that's the one thing that we don't have that the wine world has, is like these really high level business people called Negociants, who basically broker every single thing. And I think that's why Angel's Envy is so successful with that program. Is Wes Henderson is kind of like a hybrid, in this world. He's such a business forward leaning mind, and has his dad's DNA. Anyway.
All right. I want to shift topic a little bit because this is still going to be Blanton's, but the biggest news that happened last week, or was it 2 weeks ago, whatever it was the idea and the announcement of Blanton's Gold coming to the U.S. And for anybody that has been a bottle chaser or you've been into bourbon for a little bit, we've all known that Blanton's Gold and Blanton Straight from the Barrel are something that we gravitate towards because you're like, oh, it's higher proof. And now we're all like, oh, and it's got a shiny gold horse. So of course I want all these. As Ryan said earlier, I want the ski with all the gold letters on it now. So there's a few questions that arise with this. And the first one that I'm going to come to is tariffs. Because one thing that we've seen is that tariffs are being catastrophic to the whiskey industry in regards of just it's both sides of the coin here. Now, there is the idea that people are saying, okay, well, if we are going to have to pay tariffs, then let's go ahead and hold more whiskey back that we know that we can sell to our existing consumer base here in the US. Do you all think that this is a reaction to that? Or do you think this was planned out a little bit further in advance and they said, you know what, we're going to just do this because let's go ahead and make some more headlines?
I'll go first, right? I think it 100% has to do with tariffs, right? I think they are looking in real time at how to react. I think they saw a business opportunity and they're going for it, right? They don't want to have products sitting there, or they don't want to overcharge consumers to needlessly sell to no one in Europe if no one's going to be paying that price. And they saw, hey, Blanton's is hot. Let's make it happen. And 100% that played into it. Whether there's a little pre-work behind the scenes going into it, potentially, but don't get me wrong, the current tariff situation 100% played into this.
I also want to mention that in the press release, they also said that this is going to be an SRP of $120 for this particular bottle too. So don't forget that.
Yep.
I'd like to say that at the top of Buffalo Trace is probably the single smartest person in the entire spirits industry, Mark Brown. That man had this plan probably 5 years ago and had a rollout leading up to it. And this year is probably going to be like some additional Weller products, maybe a single barrel or something like that. I mean, you're going to start seeing like Buffalo Trace kind of like take their super premiums and dice them up into more limited edition releases. And frankly, it's all about getting another SKU, getting another press release out, another conversation. They own a lot of the conversation market. They own a lot of the store. They own almost all the SKUs that all the retailers want. Mm-hmm. And if every time they add one, they've got another one. So they have another reason to have a meeting with a retailer. They have another meeting to another reason to have a meeting with an on-premise person. Blanton's Gold, in my opinion, is probably just one of the, actually Weller Foolproof last year was the beginning of the rollout of seeing the kind of evolution of what Buffalo Trace is planning to do with their super premium products. They're dicing them up, gradually raising those raising the prices up a little bit more and making them even more valuable.
I don't know. It's looking at it from a marketing standpoint, genius. Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot better values out there in my book. And I try to resist so much of the hype. And I like the ancient age products probably better than their other mash bill and other than some Weller 12 or the BTEC, William LaRue Weller. The ancient age is my favorite mash bill. But the marketing just, it rubs me the wrong way.
I get it. And I wish Aaron was able to stay on because he could speak very highly to this with his experience at Esquire and some of the other more industry facing publications. I'm just telling you, man, you could just you could dangle any Weller, Blanton's, even Buffalo Trace, outside of a Manhattan window, and you'll have like 50 bro dudes chasing it down.
Yep.
The stuff is crazy.
And it's genius, and congratulations to them for doing it. It's absolute genius. But there's so much Four Roses and Wild Turkey out there that and other brands that are so much better and so much more of a value. I just don't get it personally.
So then that's not really a knock on them. That's our job to say, hey guys, can't get this, try this. And I think Jordan does a great job of that. I think Blake does a great job of that. Kenny, you really just drink it all. So
Equal opportunity drinker.
That's right.
And so, Fred, I kind of want to take a counter argument to kind of what you said a little bit, because there was something that came up in the chat by Dave Presson, and he had mentioned that, he thinks that this has to do with increased stock that's resulting from ramped up production. However, I kind of look at it and think well, maybe they're just taking, and to take Jordan's side of this, maybe they're taking away from the European allocation now and just shifting to the United States, because we've all been on tours here, right? And we all know we've been in the Blanton's bottling hall. Mm-hmm. Every day you're in there, they are bottling Blanton's, and they're doing it around the clock every single day. And it doesn't seem that they can keep up with the demand. So where is all this extra inventory coming from if you don't think it's just taking away from European allocation and from tariffs? If how are they able to keep pumping out more product?
So again, this is, in my opinion, this has all been planned. These are not knee-jerk business people. These are very smart, strategic, especially when it comes to marketing, and they happen to have great whiskey. And I just think this was a part of it. Did they change their European allocation? Hey, maybe they did, but I think this product was always planned. Maybe it got bumped up a little bit for anticipation of more tariffs or continued tariffs. But I think this has always been in creation, and I think we're going to see a lot more from that distillery with new products coming out of their heavyweight brands like Weller and Blanton's. And I don't think we'll see anything added to the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, but I think you'll start seeing more limited releases.
I got to push back just a little bit on that too, though, Fred. So I think, don't get me wrong, I think it's super smart if they were planning this for a few years, right? But I think I would categorize them just as smart for being a very smart businessman if they read the current situation, they read the current landscape, the current tariffs, and said, all right, how can we capitalize this, right? How can we turn this around and make it so that it works in our favor, right? I'd say that'd be a just as smart individual and just as smart move. So while it may be planned, right, I got to give them, I'd hope I'd give them credit for reading the current landscape and saying, what can we do to make this work in our favor?
And hey, maybe both are right.
Yeah, exactly.
So what I know is I'm not running a $1 billion spirits company. I'm sitting here.
So this isn't confirmed, but it was basically kind of backdoor confirmed of Buffalo Trace production. So they were producing about 12,000 barrels a year in 95. By 2010, that was around 100,000 barrels. And by 2018, it was 250,000 barrels. So may not be exact, but gives you an idea of the ramp up they've been doing over the last, 2 decades. So when you talk about they may not have had to steal from the European allocation, that's where I think there is more barrels that are going around. Now, whether or not it's just, if it's really because of tariffs or it's just because, take advantage of the U.S. market a little more, I think it could be a little bit of both. Maybe it turned out to be good timing. But at the end of the day, I think they love the new press releases. They love the new brand extensions. What was it? Is it Benchmark that's getting the next redo? We've seen them do it with Weller now, the 1792 Benchmark. And I think they've kind of evolved the E.H. Taylor brand to have a new release every year. I think we'll just, like Fred said, we'll just keep seeing new or several new releases each year because they want to be able to go back to the retailer, the distributor, the customer, and everybody likes something that's shiny and new.
My God, they need to scrub that turd of Benchmark. That bottle is disgusting.
They had some hang up with that. I know they were going through with it. I forget what it was, but apparently that got delayed a little bit. But I think the E.H. Taylor one's about to drop, the Marriage or whatever it is. I'm sure we haven't seen the last new label for Weller, and I mean, ultimately, I don't think the Blanton's Gold is going to be a big allocation, so it'll be gone or impossible to find. But here we are talking about it, so it worked from their perspective. I'm sure because it'll be sold out before it even touches a retail shelf.
Yeah,
But let's also take a look at what everyone else is doing here. We're seeing Brown-Forman do something similar with Old Forester. We've seen Heaven Hill do some things just like this with Elijah Craig Rye. So every company right now is coming out with these extensions to have a continued conversation. And really, we're in that spot because we're all out there looking for it. As soon as something comes out, how many people are ready, calling up their retailers to get the bottle. And that's where we're at right now. This is the distillers are gaming the hunt. They're tracking the consumers. They don't have to spend a lot of money on marketing. Hell, they could be watching this podcast right now and studying the chat just to know that, for every one of you that are on the chat, there's 100 in a market they want to target. So that's where we are right now.
And I think the key point of that too, right? And I think underlying what you're saying, Fred, is people want new, right? So all these brand extensions, everything else, right? People are on the quote unquote hunt for bourbon, but it's kind of turned to the I'm going to use the car model, right? Analogy. People just want what's the newest thing for 2019. I realize this was hot in 2018, but it also existed. What's brand new this year? What's coming out? So it's like this weird game theory where distilleries now pigeonhole themselves. Do they need a new product, right? Either a new product, just a brand extension, something every single year or multiple times a year to keep consumers interested in their brand, which you've never seen in years past before, right? So this is like whole new territory for everyone. And those that aren't doing that, right, are going to be left in the dust a little bit. So
there's one thing that I kind of want to circle back on that Blake had mentioned earlier, and it was talking about the ramping up production, because we had just got done picking 2 barrels of Buffalo Trace, and Susanna is a fantastic tour guide there, and they just got done doing their shutdown for renovations, and now they're doing 1,200 barrels per day, right? Wow. So lots of production. However, when we think about Blanton's, what does Blanton's do? It comes from one warehouse, right? Warehouse H. As Chris and Matt Cusick said in the chat earlier, did they get a renovation? Like, is it getting bigger? No, it's holding the same amount of barrels that it's always held. So, like, there's still this question that says, like, how are you able to keep pumping out more product to be able to do that? And I'll throw a question to you all as well as this becomes more popular, will we see quality suffer? Because remember, this is a non-age dated product, right? So nothing's saying that they have to put something that's a 4 or 6, 8 year, whatever it is on it. Well, do you think quality could suffer in the long term?
So just to point out why it's not age dated, we do get that dump date, right? So we will at least be able to see if it starts getting younger and younger.
But you don't know it. You don't know the date.
All you know is dump.
Yeah, that's dumped. My bad.
Yeah. I can put
Get out of here, Jordan.
Mute him, Kenny.
Hey, let me know if you want a dump date. I'll put a dump in a box and send it to you.
Oh,
Is it a Corona dump? I don't want that.
Hey. So I'm probably going to be the outlier here, but I've never been one who's really been that frantic over Blanton's. It's never scored that highly for me, and it's always done poorly in blind tastings. I think one year at San Francisco, I didn't even medal it. I don't remember what year that was, or I'd tell you, but it's not been something that has always gravitated toward my palate. So I can't see the quality going down. I think if you like Blanton's, that style is going to be there. I personally am buying Buffalo Trace regular every day of the week over Blanton's.
Yep. Matt Cusick also had something kind of funny to say, like, does it have to actually be aged in warehouse age or just be finished in warehouse age? Because maybe they just like roll it through the middle of it and they're like, hey, it was in warehouse age for like 20 seconds. So,
well, I mean, that warehouse, it probably holds what? It's probably not a 20,000 barrel warehouse, but it's probably 10.
It's big.
you know, 10 or
It's big
15. It's a big warehouse. So I'm guessing, you know, before a lot of those barrels were going to Buffalo Trace or wherever it was. And now they may just say, all right, every barrel that's in here is going to be a Blanton's bottle now. But on the quality, you know, I don't see the quality really dropping. I doubt they'll really mess with the age. You know, it'll stick around that 6-year age range for a long time. And I don't see them really changing that up, because at the end of the day, I think it would hurt them more for people to have bad Blantons than it would for them to, you know, sell a little more. That's not what's really pushing the business for them.
I agree with you, but I bet you we could look at it even 2013 or 2014 Blantons and taste it blind with a current Blantons, and you're going to have a better Blantons in 2013 or 2014.
Ooh,
I don't. I
So
mean,
that sounds like a challenge. So
is this in your head though? I mean, we've been
It's
saying
totally
about
in my head. Yeah,
We've been saying about this kind of stuff forever, right? We'd be like, oh, all the new stuff can't compete with the new old stuff. But
I'm not even saying old stuff. I'm saying, you know, not too terribly long ago.
Yeah. Well, it's like 7 years ago now, I guess.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
well, Blake, you got some of those Bourbon 2015s stashed
I do.
away? There we
I
go.
do. We can do a blind sample on that.
We don't have to sample. You can just send a bottle to each of us, and then we'll go ahead.
Yeah, you got enough. It's bottle time.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say. Because I've heard from some of the older blends from the 90s and stuff were actually like 10, 12-year-old barrels that were being bottled. But so that's a completely different bourbon than like the 6-year, but who knows? It'd be a fun experiment.
Yeah. So that's a really good question to kind of, you know, go into towards we get to the end of this, because, you know, Jordan, I kind of lean on you here because within a Breaking Bourbon article recently, you all had talked about Blanton's Gold and sort of like what it meant. And, you know, you kind of talked about, you know, the hype and hysteria of, you know, basically like, chasing after the shiny new red ball, and then ultimately just being disappointed at the end of the day because you're not going to get your hands on it. Right. And so you'd put at the end of the article, like, people are curious about what's new, but that excitement can be quickly overtaken with resentment. It's unknown how sustainable this practice will be for the company. However, there's plenty of non-bourbon companies that find great success with this strategy.
Yep.
I was kind of curious, like, you know, what other kind of companies like have a strategy like this, and, you know, and do you think that this is also always going to work with bourbon even in the future?
Yeah, so I think, right, two-part question here. So I think it's true, right? We often post these press releases, or we'll post these articles, and we'll talk about, and often it's around Buffalo Trace, around a new product or a limited edition, just something that people know is going to be really hard to get. We have so many readers reach out on a daily basis saying, where can I just find a bottle of Buffalo Trace, let alone any of their other products, right? So we put out the Blanton's Gold press release, and instantly we started being just inundated with people just reaching out saying, great, another Buffalo Trace product I'm never going to see, right? And we were like, well, that's interesting. This season haven't hit the shelves yet, and people are already pissed about that. First, you look at other, and I'm going to put Blanton's Gold now in a quote-unquote premium product range, right? Maybe not the Pappy Van Winkle range, but premium product range. You look at other products, right? We'll say high-end watches, high-end cars, whatever, where there's a limited amount, right? And people are still fascinated by them, knowing that they're not going to be able to get one, right? But they're still super fascinated. They're not pissed at the car brand. They're not pissed at Ford that they're not going to be able to buy the new Ford GT because it's so out of the price range. You know why? Because they can still go out and buy another Ford product. A lot of people with Buffalo Trace, using that analogy, they see, hey, I can't get Blanton's Gold, but guess what? I can't get any other Buffalo Trace product either. So what does it even matter?
They
right?
get
So
Fireball. They can buy a Fireball.
They get Fireball, and after a Fireball screwball face off, I'm not sure if they want either. But, you know, it's one of those things where I think people are getting a little ticked that, yeah, all these products keep coming out, especially from Buffalo Trace. But you know what? We can't get anything they put out anyway. So what's the point, right? It's like them getting salt rubbed into wounds. And I think consumers are getting really irked about this. So we'll see if this keeps up. But with more, you know, as Fred pointed out, more and more Buffalo Trace products are going to be hitting the market in years to come. Kind of just go back to that. You got to release something new every year. And people are just going to either keep getting really pissed and either start shunning the brand, or we'll see what happens. But it's going to be a really interesting experiment. That's for sure.
You know, Jordan, you brought up something like that. Those were the kinds of letters that we would get at Whiskey Advocate like 9 and 10 years ago. And it led to them changing a lot of things, because people were so upset.
Yeah.
Like you even go to straightbourbon.com, 2006 to 2011 archives, and you'll read a lot of people just being angry that they can't get stuff. The one thing that is a constant in this, and any kind of like anything that I could ever offer you as an advice would be to not get frustrated with that. Don't stop doing what you're doing. You guys are doing a great job with that, with your reporting. But the anger, people, it never ends. You start happy, you get pissed off when you become a bourbon fan, and then eventually you accept it, and you just find yourself sitting on the couch and drinking Maker's Mark again. It's a cycle of being a bourbon fan. There's no way around it.
I'm loving the comments that are finding the Ford brands and naming each Sazerac brand for what Ford brand it is.
Stag Junior's the F-150 Raptor.
That's right. Exactly.
So I also kind of want to just kind of touch on the price point a little bit too, because $120, it's steep, right? That's even over super premium of whatever that threshold was a while ago. Maybe that's just the new premium. I remember the Blanton's Gold that I purchased overseas, even after shipping, getting it back home, it equated about $70 to $80 per bottle, right? So I look at this and I'm thinking, well, I think you can actually still get this cheaper in like St. Martin and some of the other islands and other areas that are around. So do you look at this as, and I've always been a big fan of Sazerac, of what they do, of not gouging or pricing out of the market, because Pappy 23, they could sell $1,000 bottle to the distributor. They could do it and it'll sell and it's not a problem, but they don't do it, right? And I think they do it on principle, and they do it because they look at the long game. However, this is like one of the first times that they've come out and they are pricing it essentially where secondary was when it was around.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to jump in and then I'll let others take over, but because I've been sitting on this comment for a while. So I reviewed Blanton's Gold back in 2015, right? And I had bought in a bottle from overseas, and I think, I don't know, MSRP was around 80, 85 in total, right? Don't get me wrong, Blanton's Gold is actually my favorite Blanton's bottle out of the lineup, right? Green, regular, straight from the barrel. I actually prefer Blanton's Gold. But even back then, at $85 a bottle, I said I really would pause and think about spending the money on this versus just getting, a bottle or two of regular Blanton's, because I think, the price to value in terms of taste just isn't quite there. And now when you jack it up to over $100, I mean, folks, Blanton's, if you have a choice between the two, regular Blanton's all the way, just because it's going to be cheaper and you're going to get close enough, right? And if you can't, I still say there's a lot of really great bourbons out there for under $50 that, sure, it's not going to be the Blanton's name, not going to be the bottle, not going to be the shiny gold stopper, or you're going to get something that tastes really fantastic.
Amen.
So I would have people pause and think about that before they drop the money.
Yep.
Anybody else have a comment, or you just...
I didn't mean to shut that down.
I endorse Jordan's comments fully.
I think part of the problem is now these days, most people are probably paying close to that 3-figure mark for regular Blanton's, and that's just when they can find it. So it's kind of like, you have to confront reality as reality and not how we want it to be. So I don't know. Would I pay $135? Well, maybe I would, but
don't hit yourself. We've all got problems.
I'd grab it, but yeah, I know. But I don't think that's a good deal. I'm with Jordan. Like $135 for that bourbon, you throw it in a blind tasting, and blind tasting of 10 bourbons, and it's probably going to come in probably that 5 to 6 range.
5, 6.
Yeah.
So this is what I want. So if someone is listening to this show and you're an economist, I want you to study the price points of new releases of the past 5 years from craft distilleries, from blue blood distillers, and compare the new pricing to their old pricing and their traditional items. It's all over the damn place.
There's no rhyme or reason
No.
to
I mean, I could find a so-called craft whiskey that was aged in Abraham Lincoln's favorite tree for $1,500. Or I could get a bourbon that's actually, when it came out, a rye that was actually really good when it came out, but got shit on heavily for its price point. And Peerless, a 3-year-old rye, which was actually really good, was $99, and people lost their shit. And then Elijah Craig rye comes out, and it's $30, and then Old Forester rye comes out and it's 23, and it's like, it's all over the place. I don't know how they're pricing this stuff. Are they just throwing darts? I mean, how are they figuring this shit out?
I think it's all about what categories they want to be in. They want to have certain ones for every occasion. A lot of them are getting smart and they say, all right, we see some openings in the daily drinker categories. Let's put some more $20, $25 bottles out there and really take advantage of the people who are tired of seeing every bottle that's, $100 or more.
And Blake, is it the big guys being able to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
it's much harder for. I'm not saying that the smaller guys can't, because you look at somebody like a Chattanooga who's been able to keep the price pretty reasonable. Their two products are $35 and $45 around that range. But overall, yeah, I mean, Old Forester and the big guys really have a huge advantage here. And kind of, I think it's Jordan's point about Buffalo Trace. I'm surprised they haven't come out with a new product line. And maybe that's what the idea of Benchmark was to have that lower priced, hopefully readily available product that's out there whenever people say, well, I can't get blends, but at least Benchmark's still here. So, they want to hit every mark in the market if they can.
It used to be that they would decide what their price point was by going into the liquor store and seeing which bottle was selling and what they wanted to be next to. And that's how they used to do it. And I don't feel like they do that anymore. I just think I think they might have too many like MBAs in a room crowding over a table, and they don't have really any. They're just looking at like, oh, hey, who's going to buy it? Oh, bro dude in Wall Street's going to buy it. So 120. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how they're priced at. It's crazy.
There's a comma in a spreadsheet somewhere that somebody just messed up, and it's just like, we'll let it roll.
Which I guarantee you in the Blanton's Gold meetings, there was somebody who was saying, nope, push the price to $200. And then you had somebody else who was like, nah, let's be more reasonable and do 130. They know what they have. And so would it have sold out just as well at 200? I think yes, but I don't know. We're all crazy for buying all these bourbons anyways.
Kenny, what do you like?
Yeah.
You're hosting. What do you think about this? Like $130.
Mm-hmm.
Would you buy it? Would you not? What would you do? Would you recommend somebody buy it for that price?
Yeah, and not like show aside from everything, just as a consumer, would you buy a $130 bottle of Blanton's?
I think it goes back into whatever people do. You always try to get your first bottle, right? Try it. That's great. And we talk about this all the time of when you're doing tastings and everything like that. Get a few people together. If you find it, split it, whatever, try it, do it. However, I don't see this as something that actually, I take that back, because people are going to go crazy and they're going to go buy it up anyway. For me personally, it's not going to be that. I've been fortunate to be in bourbon long enough, like you all, to know that I was able to buy this overseas for a much cheaper price a long time ago. So I'm okay with it. Is it my favorite bourbon? No. Do I like straight from the barrel a lot more? I do. Yeah. Sorry, Jordan. Yeah. I do. Like, I'm a huge bigger.
Yeah, everyone has a personal taste preference. No worries.
Yeah, and so I would say, like, I would lean towards that way, and I'd say, you know what? Save your $120. Go and try and figure out, like, if you've got a relative that's on a cruise ship after this whole Corona thing flies over, and say,
don't go on cruises, everybody. Don't go on cruises.
Well, not right now. Whether it's there or whether you're going to the Netherlands or whether you're going somewhere overseas, and you say, like, just wait out for that bottle of straight from the barrel. That's personally what I would do, because that's where I think if you're going to spend $120 on a bottle, because retail, even over there, that's about what you're going to pay is $120 a bottle, and you're going to get it, at the same exact price. Like I said, for me, I think the price point's high. It really is. And I think that, a lot of people even said in the chat, it's like you're paying $120 for a 6-year product. That's pretty expensive, right?
Yep.
I actually don't think it's high for the product. I mean, because as pointed out in the chat by numerous people, supply and demand, the demand for this is off the charts. So my whole commentary about the $120, I just kind of want rationale behind it. And, I know the market will bear that. I'm just speaking in general from the bourbon industry. I just don't feel like anyone really has much of a blue book on how to price right now. But Blanton's is not going to have any problem selling. I mean, it's
agreed.
There's going to be lines.
They could charge what they want.
It's going to be allocated. We're going to be miserable.
And
welcome
those
to the
who
bourbon
know
world.
will buy Four Roses and Wild Turkey and other things.
Hey, I had a Four Roses the other day that just tasted flat out off to me. It was a single
Off?
barrel. Yeah, it was a single barrel. It was just off.
Somebody's private selection.
Store pick or just a regular?
No, it was a regular. It was a regular one, and I tasted it the next day to make sure it wasn't my palate that day, and it just it was weird.
Hey, Fred, I don't know if you've been around this long enough, but did you know that you could have 2 barrels side by side and they taste different?
This is true. But very rarely, I have never had an off product from Four Roses. Never. That was the first time.
Yeah,
except from the 90s, I had some off products.
Who was it? Was it Elmer T. Lee who had like the spoiled batch that?
It was in 2015.
Yeah,
2015, the wet cardboard batch.
Cork taint.
Yeah.
And don't forget Jim Rutledge's mutated yeast batch that went to Germany.
The white whale. That's right.
Absolutely. So I'm going to finish this up with one last question about Blanton's. And this is, now that we have seen Blanton's Gold come on, it's making waves. Will we ever see, and we had mentioned already, straight from the barrel ever hit the US?
Yes.
100%.
It's gotta be a B-Tech. I mean, it will. They
I
have
don't
to
think
know.
they'll mess with that. I don't think they'll mess with the antique collection, but I would say yes.
Yes.
So I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to go back to that comment in theory we were talking about. They're going to need a new product, right? Not in 2020, but in 2021, 2022, 23, whatever. They need a new product every year or 2 new products every year. And straight from the barrel is an easy one to slide in there.
And based on the barrel that I have in my truck, yes.
We are all headed to Norton Commons right now.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, especially if these tariffs stick around, to just kind of add on to what Jordan was saying. Yeah, I mean, if you want to be able to, it hurts me to say this because I've heard people for so long say, all right, I love tariffs, like more bourbon in the USA. And I'm like, no, that's not how international trade works. Like, we need commerce, like we need all this, like we have to grow bourbon category as a whole. However, if this is what's going to happen, and it's like, okay, well, they could basically sell it here in the USA and they would get more money out of it for the same price that they're going to have to sell with tariffs and everything else overseas. Hell yeah, like might as well keep it here, right? So I could definitely see the argument that we will see it here in a few years.
Now realize if gold's going for 130, you realize straight from the barrel is going to be a pricey product.
That's a $200 product.
Yeah, it's $250. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
I want just everybody get one last in there. All right. Fantastic way to close out the show, everybody. So I want to say thank you again for coming on. I think we hit on a lot of stuff. So as usual, we didn't do it on the podcast at the very beginning. I want everybody to kind of give their outro. So Brian, I'll let you go first.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on again. Late addition to it because this damn coronavirus didn't let me do my tasting tonight with some clients. Happy to be here. The only thing I want to add, other than the normal, find me at sippingcorn.com, bourbonjustice.com, is Obi Toppin would have been the number 1 player of the year. They would have beat Kansas in the Final Four if it had happened. That's what I'm looking forward to. Wish it would have been there. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Jordan,
Sure.
Next,
This is Jordan, one of the three guys from BreakingBourbon.com. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at Breaking Bourbon, and make sure to go to the website for a daily basis as we do update the upcoming release calendar quite often.
Well, Blake, it kind
On to
of
me? Yeah.
just kind of narrows down from there.
So
pretty
I've
quickly.
I'm taking double time for myself and for Aaron. I'm taking his outro as well. So
if you want to, go for it.
I messaged him, said
Aaron.
apologizes, was having computer issues. So I don't know if I said internet, it gets us all. It gets us all, but no worries. But
You're like, I know that all too well. my friend.
Yeah, I said I'm just glad can put the heat on somebody else for once on the air. But no, so I'm Blake from Bourboner.com. Always fun to be here, and I thought this was a great show, a lot of good information. So hopefully we all got to sit around and enjoy some bourbon and talk about the craziness and avoid hearing the corona virus for a little while. So enjoyed it as always, guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And that's kind of what I wanted to do tonight, was to hopefully take everybody's mind a little bit off of it, right? And talking about Blanton's was something that I think was easy to do. There's been a lot of news about it recently, and I think over the past year and even 2 years, we've seen this just go berserk in the market, and we've just seen a lot of people really chase after it. And maybe this is also one of those brands that is also helping fuel the growth of bourbon overall, because it is a pretty bottle and people look at it and they get behind it. It's in TV shows. So, it's something I think took long enough that we actually dedicated a show to actually talk about it, because it is a force to be reckoned with, and it is a catalyst within inside of this industry that does move bourbon in a forward direction. Fred, do you agree there?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Fred, you want to give an outro? Because I think you've got a few different places that you podcast, you got a magazine or something too.
Yes. And also in this episode of the podcast, in my Above the Char, I said I was going to San Francisco. I am not. I ended up not going due to the coronavirus. That said, you can find me on in the podcast world. I interview musicians and drink whiskey with them. I've got some fun names coming up. I got David Byrne from the Talking Heads and Clown from Slipknot coming up. So make sure you're tuning into that. Just like you search for Bourbon Pursuit, just search for Fred Minnick Show. And then got a magazine, Bourbon Plus. Oh man. Next issue, we've got Jackie Zykin on the cover, and she reveals a lot about her life and how she saved the Old Forester Rye from being one of those highly priced products. So if you want to learn a little bit about the pricing strategies of Brown-Forman, at least, Jackie Zykin's a big part of that. So make sure you're subscribing to that. Go to bourbonplus.com and, just social media, everything else, just my name, Fred.
All right, Fred. Appreciate it, man. And thank you all for joining in. Thank you, everybody that was in the chat as well. A lot of great comments, a lot of great questions that came in that really helped fuel this conversation. Make sure you follow Bourbon Pursuit on all the social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Definitely, we're still there. Jordan, you laugh.
People love the TikTok.
Hey, Jordan laughs. Guess what? Breaking Bourbon signed up for TikTok.
Hey, Breaking Bourbon's been on TikTok for a long time. We just were incognito until you found out.
Oh, see, it's starting to happen.
I still haven't signed up, but I'm gonna.
See, it's there. Don't miss the train. All right. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it, and we'll see you all next week.
Cheers.
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 There we go.
Brian, do you have like a dog off camera or something?
I did. The dog started. I hope I muted it in time. The dog
You actually
came down
did.
here.
I didn't
Heard
hear
the
it.
snapping, and then all of a sudden I see Brian like doing weird faces.
I was trying to get the dog away from me.
Okay. Like a support person. I'm like, Brian's blinking distress signals.
Trying to get the dog away. Hopefully I admitted it or muted it, but the dog was starting to growl at me. I don't know why. I'm like, because I'm talking at the counter or whatever. But yeah, good times.
Man. Yeah.
So there was just a piece of news that broke. A guy just admitted to like the New York Attorney General's office for stealing thousands of dollars worth of worth of bourbon. Jefferson's, he stole a bunch of cases off of a train.
Off of a boat?
Train?
Yeah. So
Wait, no. Say it's off of a boat.
Was he sailing around?
It was off of a train, it looks like.
Hold on, off of a train? Transporting bourbon on a train?
Wait, let's all say it. Kenny, say it.
Was it like Jefferson 18 year? Or
They broke into railroad freight cars to grab their loot, and that's all. I gotta. Hey, Brian, I'm gonna text this to you. Go pull up all the reports on this and do a blog post on it so we can have all the juicy stuff.
The text I got during the show was that the Kentucky Supreme Court has issued an order that none of the state courts can have any hearings or any trials that aren't emergencies.
Wow.
So it's more of this coronavirus shit. I mean, what am I going to do? I'm going to sit in the office?
So that means we can speed.
No.
Yeah.
we could probably do this every other day for a while if we wanted to. No.
That's right. I'll be here. Shit.
keep it going? Yeah.
So with the bourbon that you were supposed to drink with your client, Brian, where's the
Oh, my
bourbon?
Lord.
Is it actually in your house?
No, it's at the office, not here.
Well,
Even
It's all Blanton's gold.
No, thankfully not that. Now, I had a Japanese export Evan Williams 12-year 101, and then I had the 15-year Old Fitzgerald, and I had a pre-fire 23-year Evan Williams.
Nice.
And it's a banking client, and they basically said no one can leave their office.
That was the 23-year-old pre-fire, right?
Yeah, the 23-year-old.
Just reviewed that last year. That was delicious.
Yeah.
And they said nobody can leave their office.
Yeah,
They
basically.
locked them in the building, Blake. They're there right now.
Yeah.
Can we clarify? Like what?
Yeah, they're either working remotely or they have to be in their office. They can't go to other people's offices unless it's essential. And bourbon is not essential. When did that happen?
Yeah, when did that? I played golf with these guys yesterday who came down, and I won't say the company, but the company had a big chalet tent for the TPC, and they canceled everything. And the guy was like, "Hey man, like I'm from Jacksonville. I'm going down no matter what. Can I just get some tickets?" And they're like, "Nope, we don't want our name attached to any of it." So I feel like is it all like a liability thing because a lot of these companies think they could get sued, or
That's totally part of it. Yeah, they think if they send someone out, so this client has a travel ban, so there was going to be some people coming in from other states, and they couldn't travel in for it. That was the first part of the downfall of my event. But the problem is they're going to go out. The legal liability is they're going to go out of state. They're going to catch it from somewhere else. They're going to bring it back. They're going to spread it among the company, and there's going to be some sort of legal liability.
Which makes sense, but creates something like this into a massive economic disaster when it
that's already happening. What are you talking about?
Just don't look at your 401ks.
That's still that's hard to do.
Yeah, I mean,
there
is that, but there's also there's the human ethical element here. I mean, the over 65 population could get wiped out. You know, I mean, it's really bad for them, and this thing is spread, and we just don't know much about it, and there's no protection for those people over 65. At least we have a flu shot, you know. At least we know what we're dealing with there. But,
the age group that I know, the over 60 age group, anyhow that I know that I've talked to about this, they're not worried about it. I know some people, my in-laws in Florida, in a retirement community, and they're all doing their own thing. They don't care.
They're hanging out with me this weekend. We're
that's right. You've got like 6 cases in Florida. They don't care. It's
warm
really? There.
Blake's throwing an over 60 orgy.
Well, it is Florida after all. Had to throw that one in there.
Jacksonville does not count into any of those stereotypes.
Blake is Florida man.
We're more South Georgia than we are Florida.
South Georgia. You've never said that before.
Oh, yeah. I had kids in my high school who lived in Georgia and commuted to Jacksonville. Yeah.
Well, Fred, I know, like, so my music festival got canceled, and I know Coachella's getting canceled. Like, have you been in touch with like Danny Wimmer people? Are they like trying to figure out what this is going to look like, or at this point it's like too far off the distance, not really worrying about it right now?
As my legal counsel, Brian, would you recommend
Yes.
that I violate my NDA on this one?
You better not violate the NDA. Let's
And
just say
Let's just say
there's some news around the corner that everyone's going to hear.
No, nothing like that. Actually, it's a matter of like everybody's eyeballing this, and Wimmer just announced his epicenter, which is in North Carolina. They've got one in Daytona. A festival in Daytona, which used to be in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
So those things are they're still proceeding. And really, when you talk to the health community and people like my wife who are kind of like ground zero with this, they target that May 9th kind of like being when it would start dying down, because they're looking at the like die down in China. Looking at like May 9th to like June 31st ish, kind of like for it all dying out. But the amount of things that it can hurt between now and then is massive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, what was it? I've got coworkers that are in China, and they were saying like, we're actually better equipped to handle this than you in America. And I'm like, what are you talking about? We're America. We got this. He was like, no, usually if an order comes down from the government in China, you're going to follow it. In America, you get an order from the government, the first thing you want to do is go break it.
Yeah. No, he's probably not wrong about that, actually.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
You really don't have to look any further also than Italy. It's just not a good. It's not good.
We didn't get a chance to talk about it, but with so many distilleries closing, because Smooth Ambler sent out their thing saying they're closing down too for public tours, stuff like that. It's what I'm worried about is all of these small distilleries, right, who are supported by like really local scenes, right? So I think of Pittsburgh, and when I think of other PA distilleries, they're really supported not by selling their products in the state stores, but by those repeated people who go in, do the tours, buy the bottles there. I realize I'm taking things way off track, but I'm really worried about, over the next 2 months, what's going to happen to those folks, let alone all the other businesses when we tie back to the alcohol industry. Like, there's so many small distilleries that this is going to be like insanely detrimental to them.
Well, fortunately, there are. I mean, like if the things like hold to fruition that Trump brought up last night, like the SBA loans, the payroll, tax relief, that stuff can help. But I still look at an SBA loan as like I got to pay the motherfucker back. So
Exactly.
You're not giving it to me. So I don't know. And
sorry, John was asking when I was drinking.
What you got there? Yeah, I'm looking.
It's our Magnus pick that was finished in a what was this one finished in? I believe this is the cognac barrel finish that we did. Yeah. Or no, this is too easy. So this one is just straight MGP. Sorry, I can't read a label.
Bourbon or rye?
Bourbon. It's Magnus. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. I haven't had any of those Magnets.
That, and I also finished my barrel bourbon batch 15 tonight too. So.
Nice. I didn't hear any of the corks popping though,
because I know how to mute my microphone.
Hold on, I got one.
Burr.
But I mean, you got to understand, like I spend all day, every day on Zoom meetings. So it's like everybody knows proper etiquette to like, basically you always mute unless you're talking. So
how do you survive that? I mean, I just like want to stab my eyeballs out, thinking about a meeting like that. Oh my God.
Well, Fred, you work for yourself, right? So it's a little bit different. I've worked remote now for 10 years. So, and I love working remote. It's fine.
So you don't work for yourself. You're like, you actually legitimately have a W-2.
Yeah.
I thought you were like an independent contractor.
Oh no.
Okay.
No. I work for a big company based out of San Francisco and the
So
Valley.
so you have like spreadsheets and strategies and reports and oh my
I
god.
work for a company that I think we've got over 25,000 employees. Something like that.
Oh my god.
Ah.
He works for the man.
That W-2 lifestyle, man.
Hey, I love it though. Hey,
kinda
don't get me
missed
wrong. I love my
parts of-
company. It's great.
What do we got to do? How much bigger do we have to get Bourbon Pursuit so you can leave this treachery?
It's not
a
treachery.
lot bigger.
A lot and a
treachery.
lot bigger.
Yeah.
Drudgery.
You'd be amazed what tech can pay. So
No. You want to drop a little coin on the.
Yeah.
not right now. No, like I
just
said,
started
it
a new
would-
business with Amway. If you're looking to buy in,
if the stock's low enough, I might do it right now.
oh god, don't bring up stocks.
All right, I'm getting out of here.
On that
This
depressive
was
note,
good. Yeah,
Well-
yeah. Thanks for that one, Kenny.
Yeah,
Go.
thanks.
Jeez.
Appreciate it. Before we all log off.
Luckily, we're all young, so nobody's pulling from their 401ks or IRAs anytime soon. So,
Well, hey, I
We'll
got.
bounce back.
I'm looking at two finance guys on here. I was waiting for the tip to come through in the DMs to say like, y'all sell your shit yesterday, right? So, but nope, never came
Yeah, if
through.
you would have went to cash about 3 weeks ago, you'd be all
so
right.
no lie, I did roll over a small IRA like 2.5, 3 weeks ago, but I was too smart and rolled it over quickly, and I'm back in the market. I'm like, if I would have just held off on my rollover, like I would have been a genius. But
Yeah.
no such luck.
No
So close.
genius. Yeah.
So close. All right. I'll see y'all. Enjoyed it.
Bye, guys.
Raising your kids at home, boys.
Yeah. That
Go be
should be a
dads.
fun.
Oh yeah,
should be a fun
Brian,
week.
you should probably tell your daughter if she's looking for extra work right now. There's a lot of people that need babysitters.
She is all over that. I mean, she's got 2 house sitting jobs, a babysitting job.
Oh, dang.
But the
I
thing
get
is,
ran right now.
Brian's
yeah,
daycare.
the thing is, Dayton's going to be doing online courses in 10 days, so she's going to have to figure something out there. But yeah, she's all over that. Time to make money.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's my kids usually. She's on autopilot. She just needs somebody to be there.
Yeah.
Just put an iPad in front of her face. She's fine.
All right, I'll give her your address. She'll show up. You pay well with that tech job, right?
Yeah, I pay minimum wage. That's what I do.
All right,
Obviously.
I'll give her your cell phone. She'll be in touch.
All right. Cheers, guys. And
All
thank
right,
you,
you
everybody,
guys.
for joining us on the chat tonight. Appreciate y'all. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.